Welcome to Off the Post. I'm Russ Cohen. We've got Anthony Mingione. And how are you?
Doing all right, Russell. How are you?
Pretty good on this fine day. And Michael Jello, how are you?
Huh? Oh, I'm peppy. I'm here. What's going on?
Are you like Pepe Le
I'm
Pew?
with it. I'm hip.
I'm Pepe Le Pew. There you
You are
go.
Pepe Le Pew. Okay, that's what I was checking. That's good. All right, so let's as we congratulate Western Michigan, which I said on our Lockdown podcast, I really liked them, like the way they played, and so they deserved the national championship, and good for them. And Alex Bump was certainly their star, but he wasn't their star in the final two games. And my feeling is, after watching that and seeing his quotes and all that stuff, if he signs, and he might try and win another championship, we have to acknowledge that that's a possibility. But if he signs, I would put him in the AHL next year. You want to give him a game or two at the end of this year, that's fine. But I personally would put him in the AHL next year. I'm not sure how you feel.
I feel like at this point now, it's kind of, the Flyers do have a lot of wing depth that at the moment,
Right.
before as we head into the off season. That doesn't mean potentially one or a couple wingers may not get moved, may get moved this off season. It's entirely possible. I think, after the disappointing campaign that the Flyers had, although they're finishing,
strong.
They're finishing on a trying to finish on a relative high note here. And you could take that for what you were for top 5 draft pick purposes.
Which is stupid. Thank you.
Well, I mean, the players are going to do what they're going to do. As I said, the general manager did what he was supposed. The general manager did what he was supposed to do.
Oh, I know.
So at this point now, there's nothing you can do short of pulling a Brad Pitt as Billy Bean.
No. What I said was you could put Fedotov in net, and that would be your best chance.
Right. Yes. You could acquire Anton Forsberg, the human tank.
But then you worry about the trust in the. But then I do agree with the fact that it does establish, some trust issues in the.
No, I get it. I mean, it's a complicated thing. It's not.
It is. You have to look at that for the long term, and it's not something necessarily that's always forgotten.
Right.
But that being said, getting back to Bump, I do think they're going to get much like I think if you're sort of looking at potential priority order of which of the young potential prospects who are like going to be having a chance to the NHL level, I think you probably have Bump right there with Luchenko. That I think the Flyers are likely to give it, depending on what happens this offseason. If certain moves are made, Bump's going to be given a probably an even wider chance to make it, especially with his time playing at Western Michigan. That being said, for the potential long term, would the AHL be the bet? Would be a good course of action for him? Again, it depends on roster composition. I think if you're just looking at it purely from the developmental standpoint of going from there to the NHL, at least sometime in the AHL will help. But if he comes in and I call it, I often call it the Alex Tanguay principle. When as soon as you saw Tanguay in the AHL, you were like,
right.
This guy's not going to be here long. But at least it's not necessarily a bad thing to at least see it initially to make that kind of a judgment. So I agree with you from a pure developmental standpoint. I would prefer to see Bump probably play in the A. I err like you on the area of caution. That being said, the amount of the relative hype that he's been getting, I think a lot of Flyer fans who are looking for things to be happy about for the future, like he and Luchenko are probably right up there in terms of people wanting to see them in the NHL.
And the ESPN broadcast didn't help because they just kept pumping them. And then when the guy doesn't put up any points, it's like then they started moving on to other players. And it's
they all do that, though. I mean, let's face it.
To that degree. They really did it to a harsh degree. I felt like too much hype.
Yeah, and I hate when they do that because then the player looks bad. It's like, I mean, don't say, I mean, okay, he's a star. And if the star doesn't show up, then, it is what it is. But still, it's like, I think there can be a little bit of, and I'm sure it's Buchagras. I mean, I know that he's pumping college hockey.
Well, I mean, the main thing that he did on social media when he does his little, selfie video with a player behind it was Alex Bump. Now, Bump has a personality that
does have a good personality.
And I think that's what really kind of attracted the ESPN broadcast to him, is because Bump has that kind of, I'm not afraid of the camera's personality to
right.
it.
Well, I mean, but just as a sort of a broad brush thing when it comes to the Frozen Four and the NCAA, we've seen, we've seen the Jacob Fowlers, we've seen the Gabe Perreaults sign.
Yeah, Fowler got his first win already in the AHL.
Yeah, right. And there's the thing, they're talking about bump in the AHL. Fowler is starting in Laval. Now they're doing it for contractual reasons, but it's better for them to sort of entry level, get in as a pro, get acclimated. Obviously the Canadians are in a tight playoff race right now. You can't burn the first year because the difference between them making the playoffs or losing and not getting a playoff spot could be one victory. So there was no option there. Whereas the Rangers with Perreault, Russ, I don't agree with them putting him in, but they really had no option because they
didn't have any options because of the contract part. But next year he should be in the AHL,
right? Because of the stupid clear day roster stuff that needs to be straightened out in the CBA, and I'll pound on this until until I lose my voice. It's dumb. You're hurting your future product with a guy who's a first round pick. He needed to be able to play in the American Hockey League instead of sort of being exposed as not being ready in the NHL.
Yeah. And I would also say as well, just to follow up on that, Mike, is I think when you're talking about the timing of it too, when you're in the midst of a playoff race, there's already the pace of play now is increased beyond beyond the level of beyond what will be the normal
beyond
level
any
of
league.
Beyond any league, exactly. An NHL playoff race already moves it. If it's like a 1, it's like a 1.5 before it gets to it, before we get to the 2 of the first round. So it's already you're already increasing the level of difficulty, which is, again, and that's the one thing that I look at with regards to, like, not that Philadelphia was looking at Luchenko being, playing. They knew. I mean, there was no point considering. And you also take a look at the individual situation of every single team, the locker room composition, how they are, where they can fit, where they think they can kind of have them dip their skate in the pool, so to speak, for a little bit, but not get too crazy with it.
I'm talking about just having the option, because there is no option here. It's like you're either going to sign a futures deal, but a guy who's a first round pick like Perreault is not going to do that. He wants to burn their first year of ELC, but he should be able to burn the first year of ELC playing in the American Hockey League. But because it was after March the 7th,
well, it's not very advantageous for the team. So
right. I know that, but that might be the difference. That might be the difference between them getting the player signed or not, like Isaac Howard, Russ. And that's where I think now Tampa Bay risks losing the guy, because they didn't have the cap space, and they could have, if they said, okay, we'll burn the first year of the ELC if you go down to Syracuse. Well, obviously they couldn't do that, and now they're probably going to lose the guy.
Yeah. Before we talk about Howard, I did want to mention one of the guys who did really well that probably wasn't talked about enough, maybe a couple times, was Gavin McCarthy with the Sabres, Mike. He looks great. And so that's, he's a guy we talked about. I talked about him pre-draft. I liked him. He was kind of like a little, not under the radar, but like, one of those mid-round kind of guys. Mm-hmm. And yeah, he looks good. So as far as,
and he's, he's a local kid.
Yes.
He's somebody.
I told you about him right after the combine that he was a local kid, and keep an eye on him if you remember. Yeah.
Yeah. I played for the Buffalo Junior Sabres. Kevin Adams knew him very well. And he's a long-term developmental project, but he's somebody that probably stays in college for 3, maybe even 4 years. But that will benefit him, and, get stronger, get your skating better. And then once you're ready, then I think he's probably somebody who may need a year in Rochester, and then he might be ready for the NHL, because I believe he's a right-handed shot, and there's a dearth of right-hand shot defensemen on the Buffalo Sabres.
Right. So as far as Howard goes, when you're somebody like Tampa and you don't have the bonus money and there's not a lot of opportunity, a guy like Howard looks at it like, okay, listen, I like you guys, but I can go back to school. A school like that's going to have some NIL money, even if the NIL settlement.
That's the big one. Yep.
If the NIL settlement gets settled, then schools will be able to share more. And so, teams like that will be able to share. So, he can make some money while he's waiting to be a free agent. So, I don't expect him to be on Tampa, and I think Tampa will shop him at the draft. His shop is right.
This is going to be, I mean, the NIL aspect of this, Anthony, is going to really be a problem because the entry-level contract in the NHL currently is $82,500 max for an American Hockey League contract.
Yeah.
If these players get almost as much in NIL money and they don't get favorable bonuses or they don't see a path to them in with their NHL team, like Howard apparently they're like, a year in Syracuse and we'll see what happens. Well, with some teams, he might step right into the NHL. Maybe he's ready, maybe he's not, but they want a clearer path. Right. They're not going to come out. They're not going to sign so that's something in the CBA where they have to up the AHL minimum salary, maybe to $100,000, maybe to $125,000, something like that, to get these players to come in. Otherwise, you're going to have Jimmy VCs all over the place.
Yeah, and that's a perfectly good, that's a very good point, Mike. And when you take a look at the situation, they're going to be in it's sort of like a mini NHL KHL situation as well. Right. That's really in many ways where you're really trying to convince the young player, like, well, I can develop, and get paid at, and in a comfortable situation where I'm being featured. Mm-hmm. Whereas if he's in the A, there's a chance that, he might be featured or he might not be featured. It's you and a lot of other prospects, especially if it's a team that's, laden with them. And, you're going to continue to be featured on your college hockey team going into your junior and senior season. So, yeah, it absolutely makes for a real conundrum, I think, for
hockey. You have to be a top guy. Other sports,
it's not going to be like, and it's not going to be NCAA like football. It's not going to be like NCAA. It's
wrestling.
Wrestling. It's going to be. I think I shouldn't say it's going to be. And again, we could probably maybe speak to a couple people in college hockey here about how they view it, how that might play out. But to me, I don't know if it depends on the program and the school on how they.
It depends on the local businesses. Like as an example, if I'm a big shot in Michigan State and I own a car dealership and I whistle in their ear and say, "Listen, keep Isaac Howard."
It's tough for Michigan State when you've got two other very prominent. There's so much money to go around in terms of. But if you're a team like St. Cloud State, if you're a team like Western Michigan in this case, where the hockey is the powerhouse program, they're the ones who are going to be able.
Yeah, but we here at Cohen Auto, we're willing to put them in a commercial, and and.
I'm glad you got that. I'm glad your business has rebounded since COVID.
Cohen Auto, their prices are insane.
Yeah. No, I'm just giving an example. Like those are the kinds of things.
Pre-met tattoos. I'm sorry.
We'll see how it works out. One more thing, and then we'll get into the NHL. Frank Cervalli posted something yesterday that this is something that has been necessary for a while. Mm-hmm. That the USHL, the NHL, and USA Hockey have reached a landmark agreement that includes player-first initiatives and funding resources. That's where it just stops. The funding resources was the big thing because with everything going on now, with the NILs, with how players can go from the CHL to college, the USHL was going to be left in the dust.
When this all happened to me, I was like, this reads existential crisis. Something had to happen just for the USHL and for you and to survive. So this was necessary. With all the movement that we've had, I think with American prospects and how we've seen them develop, and especially how they've gotten on the biggest stage in World Juniors. They needed. This is something that it could completely take the rug out from under them from all that development. So, the NHL recognizing that situation, USA Hockey, and recognizing again the most prominent junior hockey organization in the United States, in the USHL. This is something they needed help in this case to be able to even have a chance to compete with in those circumstances.
Yeah. So I think now this puts them on better footing. So. We'll see how that goes. Mike, talking about better footing, while I was watching the Frozen Four, I would say late in the third period, I turned on like what I would call today's transistor radio, and I streamed in. Was it Joe Bowen for the Leafs? Yes. I did both broadcasts, but I like Joe Bowen. He's good. And so I tuned it in for that third period and then the overtime of the Leafs Canadiens game that you were at. And my takeaway is like you could tell Dobish had a great game and that kept him in it. I saw the shots on goal were really low for the Canadians.
Yeah.
And so aside from the Marner winner, which we'll get to, from the Canadian standpoint, are they in a little trouble here? Because they're going to go home. They may go with Montembeault, who hasn't been great lately, and they're still not in.
No, they're not in, but they did get a point yesterday, and that eliminated Detroit and the Islanders, I believe. I think, or the Islanders got eliminated when the Flyers beat them. But it's down to one team. It's down to Columbus being able to catch them. If they get 2 points in their remaining games, then they're in. But I got the sense last night that this was, I mean, obviously it had playoff implications for both of them. Had Montreal won, I believe they were good. They were good. They were good.
No, that's all they needed.
But I was talking with Ken Campbell of the Hockey News about this. Middle of the third period, they had 11 shots on goal, and we're saying they had a lot more shots than 11. I mean, it just seemed like that some of the shots that were not being registered. I heard somebody else in the press box say there were missed shots. There were shot attempts, but missed shots were like over the moon. So that's one effect of Anthony Stolarz being a 6'6" goaltender,
or is it an effect of a team that's not used to being in a playoff push?
Well, I mean,
gripping the sticks too hard.
Right, and you could say it from the opposite perspective. It's playoff time because the Maple Leafs offense dried up. You know, they did have a lot of shots on goal, but they couldn't convert. And Dobish,
love the projections already.
But Dobish is
it was a momentary happiness there.
It can't last for long.
Kyle went back the other way.
Dobish played very well. He did, and I even remarked to one of the Montreal reporters. Maybe they should think about playing him in the playoffs because he was out. He was,
I'm thinking they should too, but they're not going to do it. Apparently.
Right, but the Leafs had opportunities, but they couldn't beat them. They had a 5-on-3 in the third period and couldn't beat them. And only when they got the goal in overtime by Marner did they win. It's like you're not going to win many games. 5
defensemen, and you have to give them credit because they only played with 5 defensemen, and still the Canadians couldn't beat them.
And again, here's the stupidity of the NHL rules. So the Leafs had 7 defensemen. They Oliver Ekman-Larsson is out. Jake McCabe is out, and they couldn't call somebody up on emergency because the player had only been out had gotten hurt in the previous game. So they had to play undermanned for a game to justify calling up Dakota Mermis on emergency recall after the game, and he'll play against Carolina. But you just had a team that played with 5 defensemen. I mean, Philippe Myers probably played 17, 18 minutes. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Okay, but it's also ridiculous that the Leafs they're paying too much money on their cap.
Well,
causes that problem.
They're in LTIR.
So I mean, this is not the league's fault. This is the Leafs' bad cap management.
No, it's not bad cap management, Russ.
Then what is it?
You don't assume that multiple defensemen are going to go out in the span of a very short time, and you see players being emergency recalled, but they couldn't do it. Now
you don't complain about Vegas being up against it.
I don't care. No,
I'm actually directing this more towards Russ.
Yeah,
he's like the bad cap management. Yet Vegas pulls this all the time.
I don't say it about Vegas because nobody's saying like Mike.
Because they've won. That's the reason why.
No. Mike is saying it's a bad rule, and I'm saying don't go over. Don't spend so much. The adjustment another player.
The adjustments of the emergency recall. Remember, they didn't want teams to play shorthanded because of the cap. So you could call it an emergency recall if they're making, I think it was less than $800,000. Okay, but now you have to wait a game for that to happen. So 10 people go down, then you got to play with 10 players. What the hell are you doing?
That's okay, but then the cautionary tale is next year. Make sure you spend less on the cap so you can have the right amount of roster players.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Well, I'm sorry, there's a lot of other teams that do it.
Certain teams are going to play. They're going to go right up to the last dollar of the cap, Russ.
Yeah, here's the violin I'm playing for them in my fingers. I don't. That's why I said that, because it's like it's part of their own doing. But they won the game. In the end, they won.
Yes, despite all this like hair pulling and jumping about, they won the game.
gnashing of teeth. So right now, I mean, the Leafs are in a very favorable position. They're up 4 points on both Florida and Tampa.
Yes.
They, the one I think benefit is on Tuesday, Florida and Tampa play each other, and they're gonna go balls out because that's gonna be hope for home ice advantage. So and the worst case scenario would be a 3-point game, but the Leafs, all they have to do is, I think, win one more game. If they win one more game, they've got first place in the Atlantic lot. Now, that's not to say, folks, that means that they're going to win in the first round, because if they lock up the Atlantic Division, waiting is the Ottawa Senators, and the Ottawa Senators beat them all 4 times this year.
Mike, you can say that about any playoff series. Right.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the sad part of this, Anthony.
So don't play the playoffs then. If they were playing the Buffalo Sabres in the playoffs, and I know that just give up, Mike. At this point now, there's no point. There's literally no point. You are building up the Ottawa Senators to be
like their club LA. That's what he's doing.
Okay,
why if they operate the way you operate, they wouldn't be like, they'd be swept in the first round. I mean,
all I'm saying, gentlemen, is that.
Like, you get the advantageous freaking matchup, and you're still
all I'm saying.
Same way.
You win the division. Your goaltending is playing great. Nylander scored 44 goals. Blah 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 blah. Doesn't mean a good goddamn.
Miserable. God.
Underneath my name,
you got another. How about this way? You could go the other way. Hey, you got another shot.
Yeah.
And you got an advantageous shot.
Yeah.
Now, granted, it could be like the Philadelphia 76ers types of advantageous shots, but I will say the Leafs are in better circumstances here. They don't have the health.
They were in good circumstances when they lost to friggin' Montreal. Had no business beating
them. In the bubble of all places. I still take that into account. It was such a weird.
There was no crowds there, but it wasn't in the bubble. But it's like the real season is nearly upon us. That's what I mean.
It is like, I will go with you on all of this. I feel like I need to see things happen before I immediately go for the arsenic like you do.
2 words, folks. Show me, or I'll put 3 words.
I have one more question regarding this discussion. One more question is, Mike, who will be the favored team in the playoffs if it's the Leafs against the Senators, regardless of the regular season?
The Senators.
Okay, Mike.
You're being so disingenuous right now. It's like, I will stick to my brand until
based on the fact that this core group has not won a freaking thing, and they've lost 4 times to Ottawa. I'm saying, okay, the Leafs will be, if it's FanDuel or DraftKings, the Leafs will be the favored team. In my mind,
finally, okay.
And in my mind, and the minds of hockey fans, especially in Toronto, who have seen this act for the last 9 years, Ottawa's the favorite team.
The tightest sphincter I've ever met.
So,
no comment there.
We will mention briefly the Flyers-Islander game, mainly from the Islanders' perspective.
By the way, before we get as we discuss that,
here we go,
Russ. I'm going to basically say was the game itself was literally the
oh my god.
I mean, I don't think the Flyers could have played as poorly in one period as they did, and then actually just 180 it in the third period the way they did. But go ahead.
Yeah, and the Islanders too. Like, I get it. You had Marcus Holberg in net. You didn't have Sorokin, but still, you're supposed to be playing with your life on the line, and I think they did for like brief moments in period.
Second period, they looked phenomenal. They were just absolutely. They looked as they were locked in, and Philly couldn't figure out a zone exit for the majority of the second period to save their lives.
Right.
And yet, as Mike, puts up the Star Wars scroll style, it's over.
And then they just, you can call that one maybe bad luck for the Islanders, but in the end,
they needed more goals that period. That's what happened.
Right.
They needed
in
to
the end,
cash
did they deserve to make the playoffs? No. They're not really going to do anything.
Sad part is, like, I will say this for the Islanders' credit, I thought Bo Horvat was fantastic.
He was tremendous.
It was absolutely. He was leading in that game.
Nobody
followed though.
The Islanders need more goals. Oh my God! What a! I mean, this is not what a.
Yeah, if John Tavares was there, maybe.
I mean, they've needed more goals for 5 friggin' years. How many more times, Lou, do we have to tell you? Your team doesn't score enough. You don't have the offense. And then you go out, and the guy that you add is Anthony Duclair, and he's a complete friggin' bust. Now, they can't anticipate the Barzal injury. I mean, that's unfortunate.
That hurt.
That hurt big time. Especially when it hurt when the rest of the team, other than Horvat and a couple other players, there's not a lot of offense there.
Yeah.
All right.
So I mean, that's my point.
In the game that had a lot of offense, I want to mention quickly the Blackhawks and Winnipeg Jets. That was an interesting game. I mean, this was a game where, Hellebuck was in net.
Mm-hmm.
I saw Frank Nazar score a tremendous goal on Connor Hellebuck late in that game.
Yeah.
And I think that game actually kind of told us that at some point, when Askarov is an NHL goalie, the Blackhawks are almost there. Like, they're getting very close now.
You mean when Spencer Knight?
Sorry, wrong team. Yeah. When Spencer Knight,
is a solid
NHL, or maybe middle of next year, they're going to start to put a scare into teams.
There's a lot of work that has to be done there with that roster. Sure, but I would say that much. There's definitely a little bit of hope now, I think, in Chicago.
Well,
in a very, very rough season as it has been for them.
Well, the scare was on the part of the Winnipeg Jets because I haven't seen an update on it, but I did see Nick Ehlers helped off the ice. And we're talking about, the playoffs start next Sunday.
Right.
And if Ehlers is seriously hurt, I mean, that puts a large crimp in the style of the Jets. I mean, they need him if they're going to have any kind of playoff success. So, and we'll track that. But that that was, I mean, I don't know what got in some people's bees in their bonnet, but like that wild Columbus Washington game where Ryan Leonard and Sean Corrali go at it, and Corrali beat the crap out of him. I mean, I know that that's Leonard.
Listen, Leonard's got a reputation, and
Leonard's dynamic.
You walk into the NHL and.
Yeah, and he got lashed to the ice. He got lashed to the ice pretty good.
He was punching when Corrali's arms were, or he was in a scrum and he was punching away, and then Corrali got loose and said, "Hey, kid, eat some of my left hands."
And Corrali is a physically fit guy. Like, he's been around.
Yeah, and this is not. Yeah, he's. Leonard's used to kind of being the bull in the china shop at every level. And, this, I guarantee you, when we get to it, when Ryan Leonard's 4 years down the line, and they always ask you, what was your welcome to the NHL moment? It was the business end of Sean Corrali's left hand.
Yeah.
It was like Robin Ventura charging Nolan Ryan. Then it's like, uh-oh.
Yeah, I think it's Ventura. At least Ventura was a well-established veteran. That's not a welcome to Major League Baseball moment, but that was a distinctly welcome to the NHL moment there for Ryan Leonard.
No question. Tom Wilson probably talked to him after the game, I'm sure.
No doubt. Although I will say Wilson was one of the ones who actually went after and then got his own 10-minute misconduct as well for that. So it's like, but I guarantee afterwards it's like, well, what was that like, kid?
Now here, this will be Mike's portion of the show where
hey,
Jake's favorite part too, I guess.
Jake's like, yeah, I like that fight too.
Mike's favorite portion will be this. Not that there's a serious injury to Matthias Ekholm and he could be out for the year, but just that Mike will be like, why was he playing? So go ahead, Mike, take it away.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're preserving McDavid and they brought him back this week. They're preserving Draisaitl. I would make the argument, not that, believe me, they're the two most valuable forwards in the league, and any chance that they have in the postseason are riding on them. But if you look at that piss poor Edmonton defense, Matthias Ekholm was just as valuable, and now it sounds like he's out for the season, Anthony. So I mean, I'm not saying they're going to lose
tough.
to LA
Yeah.
because they have with LA what 20 years ago Toronto had with Ottawa. It's living in their head. But if they get
losing Ekholm, I you know me, I'm a big Ekholm guy. I'm a huge Ekholm guy. If I'm building an NHL team, Matthias Ekholm's on that blue line. There's no question. I when he went to Edmonton, it was such a big move in my mind to just for a blue line that was I had questions in. Ekholm kind of he could cover for like two defensemen.
Right,
for the way he plays, again, it's not he's not a superstar,
no.
But anybody who probably plays alongside that guy knows how critical he is to any blue line that he plays on, and to not have him, you're right. I think they can beat LA, but for the long term of the postseason, it's going to be difficult for me to be picking Edmonton as we get into. Again, it depends on matchups and everything else, or if they get. And it comes down to Edmonton as a collective saying, okay, he's not walking through the door, the proverbial cliche. We all have to play collectively at a higher level in order to compensate for his loss.
I mean, they play LA in the first round, and then they play the winner of what I believe is going to be Vegas, either Vegas, St. Louis, or Vegas, Minnesota. So I expect Vegas to win that series, although Vegas has had some injuries too. But I mean, I don't see them getting by Vegas if they get by Los Angeles. But I just reiterate the point. If Ekholm is just coming back from an injury, why aren't you holding him out? I mean, your defense, Edmonton, is three guys. Three. It's Bouchard, Nurse, and Ekholm. The rest of it is substandard. And the only chance that you were going to have is to play those guys 25, 26 minutes in the playoffs. Now you can't do that. Stuart Skinner is going in the playoffs in a completely different mindset that he went last year. I mean, of course, I'm rubbing my hands with glee with Edmonton, on the precipice of losing, but, because I hate that organization. But, I like some of the players. And Ekholm, I mean, I don't think any fan of any team in this league wouldn't want Matthias Ekholm on their blue line. That's how good he is.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So, all right. Just to answer a question from Randy, Russ, did the Flames make a mistake when the Flames picked Parekh over Bouillon? They're both really good.
They're two different types of defensemen.
They're different type of defensemen. It's too early to say.
I think it's recency because you were watching him in the college hockey playoffs, and and Bouillon had a great regular season. You could maybe turn around and ask that question of
and a fantastic world
for Philadelphia. You could make that. You could potentially make that, but again,
and we will. Yes. I mean,
as we move forward,
it's early. It's early.
It's still very early.
But talk about an embarrassment of riches. And I mentioned this to Russ before. It's like, okay, you got the Minnesota Wild. You not lucked into because you traded for Brock Faber, and Brock Faber is a great young defenseman. And you've got Spurgeon, and you've got Brodin, and your defense is fairly solid. And now you add Bouillon, who's going to step right in.
And you're hoping that you're crossing your fingers. You also don't forget David Jiricek.
Yeah. I mean,
Jiricek in the mix too. He needs a little time he obviously needs a little bit. He's one of those guys who I think you need a little time to develop. But yeah, I would say Minnesota. It's an impressive. Both on the regular, both on their NHL roster and for what's to come. They've got two potential linchpins for their future.
It's along the lines of Anaheim, and Russ and I were talking earlier in the week because on the Hockey News podcast we were talking about Jackson Lacombe, who's having a big year. Another Minnesota guy like Faber, who's having a big year with the Ducks. Okay, how are the Ducks doing in terms of sniffing out defensemen? Lacombe, Mantukov, Zellweger. I mean, it never stops. Why?
It does help when your team's pretty bad and you make those selections.
Right, but
they've had an opportunity, Anaheim, to hit.
Some of those guys, though,
Lacombe was a second-round pick.
Right.
Yeah, it happens though. That's the reason why we talk about second-round picks being as important as they are. Yeah. And that's not something to be, when you only went for a second round. When a guy gets straight for a second-round pick, those. if you talk about third round pick, okay, fine. We all know what the percentages are. We've talked about that ad nauseum with Shane Malloy about the percentages. Second rounder is a deep, it's still a pretty good lottery ticket.
Yes.
No question. I would say this, though. Mintyukov was a gutsy pick in the sense they took him 10th when you had guys.
Right. Like, I remember when that pick happened, and they were like, that seems like a high reach. And I'm like, they must see something there.
There was Geeky, Matejchuk, Nazar, McGroarty, a lot of guys on the board. They went with him. I mean, that's a gutsy pick like that. They knew.
And those again, he's an NHLer, and those guys are knocking. Some of them are knocking on the door. Some of them are in the league, but
they knew more than I did, obviously. And that's the thing. That's what they're good at.
And you see the benefit, even though he's not the defenseman he was a couple years ago, or even Radko Gudas, but they have Gudas and they have Jacob Trouba as veteran guys. Like, this is how you play, boys.
Right. Yeah.
And you need those guys. So they're schooling as well as playing. And I look at Anaheim, and Russ and I, again, we were both talking about this. Look at the talent on this team, McTavish and Carlson and Troy Terry. I mean, I think that's a team. If I'm going to talk about one team that's going to make a big step next year, it's going to be Anaheim.
Yeah, they're close. I will say this: of all the social media accounts in the NHL, there's no question the Hurricanes is the trolliest. And it's like, they do kind of act like they've won the Stanley Cup. It's like recently. It's like, look, you killed the Rangers 7-2. You show these Ranger fans and you say,
they win. Maybe they've won. Maybe there's some sort of NHL social media award that they've won. So they are doing victory laps this season and you're just not aware of it.
Maybe. But it's just like, you have to admit, they take it to a new level over every other social media account in the NHL. Agreed?
It used to be the LA Kings, but now they've sort of calmed down. And now, if your goal is to engender every fan in the NHL, not in Raleigh, to see your team get bitch slapped, well, then, there you go. Because, I mean, that really, nobody likes this. You want to talk trash. Okay, put your money where your mouth is.
I don't know that nobody likes it. They probably wouldn't do it if they think nobody likes it. You don't like it, but their fans may like it.
Their fans probably like it, or at least some of them.
Therefore, that's who they're catering to. They're not worried. They have to cater to their fan base. You may not like it. It may not be the Leafs style of way of doing it, or other organization style of doing it. But if they think they're if they've got a decent thumb on the things that their fan base likes, and they like their social media extra spicy, so to speak, with a little extra barbecue on it, and so be it.
I would say have a better history of winning before you do that, though. That's what I would say.
You could say that, but again, it's the social media game. And again, for them, it's at the end of the day, it's the engagement. That's how they're measured.
Yeah. Now, Mike, I saw that. I didn't watch any of the Sabres game, and why would I? But
we have Mike to do that.
Why would anybody? Why would anybody?
Michael do it. Mike does it so you don't have to.
I do see tweets from my buddy Matt Barnaby, and he was very happy with the way that the Sabres players came to the aid of Yuri Kulich.
Yes.
And let's talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, you have to put this in the perspective of this is the team that's sort of like nobody responded when Stefan Nason hits your best player in Tage Thompson. And then the next game against a different opponent, Dennis Gilbert, who's the designated fighter. I mean, their season was over with. They didn't put Gilbert on for the rest of the game to do it against Nueson, which is, I believe, Carolina. Everything is bleeding. But the next game against a completely different opponent, Columbus, then Dennis Gilbert fights Matthew Olivier, which is pointless. It was a stage fight. It was like, that really shows you shouldn't take advantage. No, it has to be in the moment. And last night, and I think it was a borderline hit. I know that a few people who were at the game were saying, it was ridiculous that no penalty. Originally, a penalty was called. I think it was Gadjevich that hit him. But Everybody responded. Zach Benson jumped the guy. I mean, Zach Benson's 5'10" and 175 pounds, but the kid's got guts. Yeah, so everybody jumped in, and that's the right response. You don't have a lot of toughness on the team, but you have to basically stick up for each other. So I give them a lot of credit. Now, on top of that, Owen Power got hurt, and I don't know the extent of the injury, but and okay, they only have 3 games to go in the regular season. So, but the Sabres are going to have a lot to say. I mean, even though Toronto won and they're up 4 points, they're playing Tampa today. They're playing Toronto on Tuesday. Really, they're going to have a lot to say about who wins the Atlantic Division. But I just look at this and, I think it's 8 of the last 9 games, Russ, they've played their 37-year-old backup in goal. And I'm like, okay.
He's the heartbeat of the team, Mike. What are you talking about?
You just signed Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen to a 5-year contract, and down the stretch, because these wins are so important, you're playing James Reimer. I think the priority here, even though he's played 50 some odd games, was to get your goaltender and his head straightened out before the end of the regular season.
I agree, but I think now, noticing that Devin Levi had a bad game on Saturday in the AHL, and noticing that Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen is not fully in that number 1 spot yet. Yeah. Welcome back, James Reimer. He's going to be in for a payday here.
One of the players in the locker room when we were talking to Reimer was chanting, "One more year, one more year." I'm like, oh, okay, you want to carry 3 goals? I mean, honestly, the path to the Sabres having some success in the regular season to be able to get to the playoffs has to be behind one of the 2 younger goaltenders taking the bit and running with it, not a 37-year-old goaltender who's had a great career, but he's a vagabond. He's a journeyman. He's somebody who's been all over.
Maybe this is the low-key way of the Sabres management saying, put Reimer in, just like we were talking about with the Flyers should be putting in Ivan Fedotov if you're trying to ensure that top 5 pick. Maybe that's what the Sabres are. They don't want to actively do it, but low-key trying to do that.
Anthony, they're winning. It's like, this is like,
I'm aware of that fact, but you would think that Reimer would not be a contributing factor to that.
This is the Toronto Maple Leafs playing Martin Gerber, and the guy's winning. I mean, it's like honestly.
This is hockey. I don't care what your best laid plans are. I don't care. It's hockey.
Yeah.
Anything can happen.
Yes.
I said the same thing with the Flyers. You could trade off guys, and then they get to the end of the season, you fire the coach, and then the things you don't expect happen. This is
what I'm going to say. James Reimer is younger than Craig Anderson. There you go.
Well, yes, that's true. But
I mean, at this point now, Russ, I mean, we're getting really grabbing at things now.
Well, he was 40 and 41 when he was with the Sabres. The Sabres.
I know he looked like you in that.
Yeah, but Craig Anderson was playing his once a week. Reimer's playing. He's the starter right now. I'll just finish off with this.
Mm-hmm.
The end of the regular season is the Thursday for the Sabres.
Yes.
And we will have our picks on Sunday.
Yes, they play
on Sunday. Are we having them on Wednesday? Are we have to wait till we're going to wait till Sunday? Or are we doing Wednesday?
Yeah, we have to wait.
We have to wait.
All right, fine. But I mean, when's the playoffs start exactly?
Sunday.
So okay, fine. We'll get our picks in at that time. Okay, good. Okay.
So the Sabres have 3 games remaining. It does not. I mean, I could be completely wrong because I didn't think they were going to fire Don Granato, and then all of a sudden they did.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. Lindy Ruff is going to be back. He's got another year left in his contract, and I don't get the feeling right now that Kevin Adams is in danger. He should be. I mean, this team has not made the playoffs.
Games, Mike. What are you talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Are you kidding me? Okay. If they had won 3 games during that 13-game winless skid, or if they didn't have another 6-game losing streak, they would be in a great position.
I just feel like Mike is in what I would kind of call like the not Bermuda Triangle. There's this
it's a bad play.
No. It's 2 things. He does 2 teams, both of them make him
opposite.
One is winning and he's still miserable, and the one is losing the other team and is also like Mike likes it's like the Neapolitan of agony.
There's a constant in my life and it's misery.
It's the Neapolitan of Mike's agony.
So if it's the Neapolitan, we'll end it.
I will eat a bowl full of screws.
But here's the thing, though. But here's my question: for the Neapolitan ice cream, which flavor do you eat first?
Strawberry
for you. I'm chocolate.
It just depends. And honestly, it could be whatever comes out first. I do my intention of trying to do the sweep scoop and get it all and try to get it all in one.
But it's hard to
start with.
But it's hard.
When you first open it, it's
The funny thing is that the chocolate in a Neapolitan ice cream usually always sucks. It's always like this bland chocolate. And
it's got a little vanilla mixed in. That's what I like about it. It's kind of.
I do think it because it's not pure. Again, exactly. It's in with multiple other flavors that it's always
like a
going
little
to
bit
be
of vanilla mixed in. Like
if it's not if it's not your main, if it's not the main base,
yeah,
it's just not going to be quite the same because it's at the end of the day, it's competing flavors.
Correct.
Yep. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it for Off the Post. We'll catch everybody next time.
Take care, everybody.